So we'll talk a little bit about that, give you an update on what's going on with coronavirus. You saw on Wednesday more than 3,100 deaths, which was a record number of deaths in one day for the U.S. And then this story came out December 9th, then with John Hopkins, who John Hopkins University is named after. John Hopkins reveals that his founder owned slaves. John Hopkins reveals that his founder owned slaves. The university and its medical system have long celebrated their founding benefactor as a staunch abolitionist. But newly surfaced documents tell a different story. Newly surfaced documents tell a different story. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about that. There's a big article from the New York Times dealing with this. We posted this on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, when it came out. There's also an article from NBCnews.com about this as well. NBCnews.com. Okay, so we'll talk some about this history. Once again, this is history in the headlines. NBC News has an article: John Hopkins, long believed by university to be abolitionists, owned slaves. I mean, you know, there were a lot of white people who owned slaves and who participated in that and got rich off of it and passed down wealth to future generations. Okay. And, you know, this deals with understanding racism as a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. This deals with understanding racism as a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race. Okay. So then we got the news today also that actor Tiny Lister, best known as portraying Debo in the Friday movies, passed away today, age 62. Actor Tommy Tiny Lister, passed away today, age 62. TMZ first reported this, and we posted an article from blackamericaweb.com, dealing with the passing of Tiny Lister. So we'll talk some about that as well. I posted a article from the Washington Post. Minneapolis City Council votes to cut millions from police budget amid record crime rates. Minneapolis City Council votes to cut millions from police budget amid record crime rates. And this goes back to this past summer when you had the protests dealing with the killing of George Floyd and other unlawful killings, unjust killings of African Americans, and mass protests out in the street, rightfully so. Mass protests out in the street. And there was a vote that took place a few months ago where the Minneapolis, Minnesota City Council voted to dismantle the police department. And the mayor, who's a white male, the mayor was for reforming the police department, but not dismantling the police department. This gets into this whole debate over defund the police, things like that. You know, we've talked about that here on this show before. I told you defund the police. That's the wrong terminology. Okay, you have to understand messaging. I have a background in marketing. You have to understand messaging. A more accurate term would be reduce responsibilities and reallocate resources. Reduce responsibilities and reallocate resources. When you start talking about defund the police, that means a number of different things to different people. Well, what's going on right now in Minneapolis, Minnesota is not going too well. The Minneapolis City Council, which tried and failed to dismantle the police department in the wake of George Floyd's death, voted early Thursday to shift nearly $8 million from next year's police budget to other city services as part of an effort to, quote unquote, transform public safety in the city. Transform public safety in the city. The controversial plan was approved unanimously as part of the city's 2021 budget. But in a statement early Thursday, Mayor Frey praised the council for removing language that would have permanently shrunk the size of the force of the police force by about 130 officers in what he described as a defining moment for our city, a defining moment for our city. Council members who supported the quote unquote safety for all plan argued the city could no longer tolerate what they described as a broken system of policing and a department that has been resistant to reform Now there've been numerous problems with the Minneapolis Police Department. And sometimes in some extreme cases, you just have to totally dismantle a police department. That has happened also. That is true. Okay. But when you have a generic term like defund the police, people have to understand there are approximately 18,500 police departments all across the country. Approximately 18,500 police departments, approximately 800,000 police officers all across the country. Different size police departments, 30,000 plus in New York City, right around 2,000 here in Detroit, about somewhere around 16,000 in Chicago. Some police departments have 10, 20, 50 officers, depending upon the size of the city. So trying to take a cookie cutter approach all across the country, that's not going to work. If the police departments need to be adequately funded, not overfunded, adequately funded. And you also need funding for mental health facilities and education and prevention programs and housing, affordable housing. All of that is necessary. Okay. All of that is necessary. But I saw an article going back to November with Minneapolis, Minnesota, dealing with the rising crime rate. Okay, and so I knew that you're gonna have a really big problem with this. Okay, I posted this article on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. This was early this morning. Okay, because I was up late after last night's show and I was editing video. This thing got 1,700 likes, 874 comments. But let's look at some here. So council members who supported the Safety for All plan argued the city could no longer tolerate what they described as a broken system of policing and a department that has been resistant to reform. And one of the challenges is dealing with the police union. And oftentimes the police unions are against change for the better, holding police officers accountable. Now, as I've said before, and I stand by this, at the end of the day, after all the pontificating is done, after all the analysis is done, at the end of the day, many of us are going to have to apply to these police departments and become the police officers that we say we want to see. At the end of the day, because if we don't become the police officers in our communities and become the type of officers we say we want to see, where the hell are they going to come from? Are they going to come from the white suburbs? Where are they going to come from? If we don't become the police officers that we say we want to see and become the officers in our communities to protect our communities and have a guardian mentality as opposed to a warrior mentality, if we don't become the officers in our communities, where are they going to come from? You want all the police officers in our community to be white? See, that at the end of the day, after all this back and forth and terminology and arguments and debates, all that, at the end of the day, we need to come to that conclusion. Quote, believe me, this is not an easy vote to take, but I believe it is right, end quote, said Andrea Jenkins, a council member who represents an area of South Minneapolis adjacent to the street corner where George Floyd was killed. Now, the vote came after days of contentious public hearings and deeply emotional debate among council members who have openly struggled to balance concern about historically high crime across Minneapolis against public calls to reform a police department that has long been accused of racism and excessive force, especially against residents of color. Now, the budget fight unfolded 6 months after George Floyd's death, which sparked worldwide protests and a national reckoning on issues of race, social justice, and policing. Race, social justice, and policing. And let me pull up this article here. Yeah, we have it here. So there was another back in November. There was an article that I saw from the Washington Post. Minneapolis violence surges as police officers leave department in droves. See, this is the other part of the story. Minneapolis violence surges as police officers leave department in droves. So that tells me that they have some openings in the Minneapolis Police Department. We need to fill those positions. We need to fill those positions. Okay. This is from November 13th, 2020. We're coming up on a break. Listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 a.m. the Superstation Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stand by, everybody. How's everybody doing? Everybody share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in. It's been a busy week. I'm tired. How's everybody doing? I've been editing video, and you see we've been doing a lot of rebroadcasts throughout the day. Okay, we got Nini. We got Rashida. Hey, if you like this type of information, you could donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App. $ the AHN show through Cash App, then also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show as well. Okay. All right. How's everybody doing? All right. Let's see. Stand by, everybody. We'll be back from commercial break in a couple minutes here. And then remember, we're on Sundays also, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Stand by. Friday night, we're going to rebroadcast. We won't be on live Friday night. We'll do a rebroadcast. They're going to do a rebroadcast of my show on 9:10 a.m. Superstation also. I'll be back Sunday night live. So we'll rebroadcast. We'll rebroadcast a show so you'll be able to watch it. We just won't be live. Okay, so we're talking about Minneapolis police. We'll talk a little bit about Tiny Lister also. Let me get ready for this next segment. Stand by, everybody. Okay, we'll be back from break in 1 minute. Okay. Stand by. We got Anthony. We've got Nini, Rashida, Carla. Everybody share this broadcasting on social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in. African American business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast. Email us at customerservice@africanhistorynetwork.com. Okay. All right. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 a.m. the Superstation Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Thursday, December 10th, 2020. And we are live. Hope everybody's doing well today. It's been a very, very busy day. Want to wish a special happy birthday to my niece Chris Jackson. Also, her birthday was December 6th. So special birthday shout out to my niece, one of my sisters at Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. Calling numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the calling number if you have a question or comment. And remember, we're here 6 days a week. We're here 6 days a week, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to 12 midnight Eastern Standard Time. And then also we're here on Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as well. We're still here on Sundays. If you like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App. And then also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me/the AHN Show. Okay, so we'll go back to the story here dealing with Minneapolis City Council here in just a minute. We'll talk about that. We'll talk a little bit about Tiny Lister as well. And I want to dig into the story dealing with John Hopkins University. John Hopkins reveals that his founder owned slaves. John Hopkins reveals that his founder owned slaves. Now on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right knowledge corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events and history and politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, K-E-M-E-T, to 22828. And then also visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can sign up for our email newsletter there as well. All right, 313-778-7600 is the calling number if you have a question or comment. Okay, so right before the break, we were talking about this big story out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. I posted this article on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. It got about 1,700 likes, almost 900 comments. Minneapolis City Council votes to cut millions from police budget amid record crime rates. Minneapolis City Council votes to cut millions from police budget amid record crime rates. And they cut $7.7 million from the 2021 police budget. They want to redirect those funds. They want to redirect those funds into things dealing with prevention and mental health. And I mean, all legitimate needs. Okay. All legitimate needs. I don't think people disagree with the need. Now, the vote came after days of contentious public hearings and deeply emotional debate among council members. And let me scroll down. I want to find this here. Okay. The vote came after days of contentious public hearings and deeply emotional debate among council members who have openly struggled to balance concern about historically high crime across Minneapolis against public calls to reform a police department that has long been accused of racism and excessive force, especially against residents of color. Now, the budget fight unfolded 6 months after George Floyd's death. We know his death sparked worldwide protests and a national reckoning on issues of race, social justice, and policing. Now, George Floyd, let me see here. Let's see. So Officer Derek Chauvin, who had his knee on George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, was with the Minneapolis Police Department for 19 years, and he has been charged with murder, and 3 other officers at the scene, J. Alexander Ewing, Thomas K. Lane and Tao Thiel have been charged with aiding and abetting. All four were fired from the police department and are scheduled to go on trial in March 2021. Now, Mayor Frey had proposed a $175 million police budget for 2021, a cut of approximately $14 million from the approved 2020 budget because of declining city revenue related to the coronavirus pandemic. But under the budget approved on Thursday, the city council would divert $7.7 million from law enforcement to fund alternatives to policing, including mental health crisis teams and additional staffers in the city's Office of Violence Prevention. And let me, I just want to check one thing right here. So give us a call if you have a question. Mayor Jacob Frey. Mayor Jacob Frey. Okay, so now you have this taking place in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and you have a rising crime rate at the same time. All right. About $5 million of that money came from cuts to a budget for police overtime. About $5 million of that money came from cuts to a police budget for police overtime, a move that Police Chief Madaria Arradondo has strongly discouraged, calling overtime a necessity for the department as it copes with staffing shortages and prepares for the trial of the 4 former police officers charged in George Floyd's death. Okay, so now those that don't know, Chief Madario Arradondo was black. Okay, he's working to bring about reforms inside the police department as well. Okay, but he's saying, look, you have police officers who are quitting the force in Minneapolis, and he's saying you don't want to cut overtime. Okay, because that's going to reduce the amount of officers we're going to be able to have out on the streets. This article here was precipitated one by one back in February, but let me continue with this one for just a minute here. The department has been funded for about 880 officers in the year 2020. The Minneapolis Police Department has been funded for about 880 officers in the year 2020. But Police Chief Madaria Arradondo told city council members Monday that as of December 1st, the agency was down 166 officers. The agency is down 166 officers, some of whom have permanently left the force and others who have been out on long-term medical leave. Many officers citing post-traumatic stress disorder from the civil unrest that erupted after George Floyd's death. So for the 2020 city budget, the city of Minneapolis, Minnesota was budgeted for 880 police officers, but they're down 160 police officers. Now for the 2021 budget, they're going to cut 7.7 million from the police budget, and 5 million of that 7.7 million being cut comes from police being able to pay police for overtime. And you down 160 officers. Sounds good on paper sometimes. I mean, this is the difference between slogans and like real life practical application. See, a lot of times this stuff sounds good on TV. A lot of times stuff sounds good on the hashtag. But as somebody's actually been involved in actually writing public policy for the city of Detroit, I'm talking about myself. I've actually been involved in writing public policy for the city of Detroit. When you actually get in there and actually have to do it, it's different than what you think is going to happen. Okay, there's a whole lot of stuff sounds good in press conferences, but when you actually got to get in there and you look at the different entities that are connected and you're trying to bring about reform, it's entirely different. In a last minute debate, council members rejected a motion that would have reduced the number of full-time officers to 750, essentially not replacing the officers who have left. Supporters argued that the amendment would simply take the open positions off the hooks, as the staffing shortage is unlikely to be solved in the coming year. Quote, it's not possible to magically recruit more officers, says Steve Fletcher, a city council member who represents part of downtown Minneapolis. Open positions do not solve crimes. Open positions do not write tickets. Open positions do not prevent anything. They do not deter anything. They do not create a sense of safety. Okay. I still say at the end of the day, after you get all past all these white people talking all this stuff, at the end of the day, we're going to have to apply to these police departments and become the officers we say we want to see. The ones that are not going to engage in racial profiling, police brutality, planting drugs on people. Because if we don't become the officers we say we want to see, where they're going to come from? Where they going to get them from? And then when we go fill these positions, that's less positions for white supremacist police officers to fill. Quote, it's not so under the budget plan approved early Thursday, the council set up an $11.4 million reserve fund that would include about $6 million. Mayor Jacob Frey had budgeted for 2 future recruiting classes, as well as an additional $5 million for police overtime. The police department would have to get city council approval to access the funds, an effort to increase accountability for the department, council member said. Read the rest of this article, okay? So this is something extremely important. See, this is where this is what I explain to people. Stuff sounds good in press conferences. It sounds good on social media. Sounds good in hashtags. When you actually have to implement this stuff, and when you are responsible for the consequences, when you're responsible for when you are elected official and you're responsible for the consequences, is a whole nother story. See, the activists ain't, when stuff go wrong, they're not looking for the activists. They're looking for the elected officials. When stuff go wrong, they're not outside the activist house protesting. They're outside the elected officials' house protesting. Minneapolis City Council votes to cut millions from police budget amid record crime rates. So this is from December 10th, 2020, Washington Post. There was a story the Washington Post had back in November. I saw it. I don't remember if I posted it or not, because I read so many articles a day. I monitor about 35 different news sources daily. So when you when you follow us on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, you see a representation of just a fraction of the articles that I've read that day. Back in November 13th, 2020, Washington Post had an article, Minneapolis violence surges as police officers leave department in droves. Sounds like job openings to me. Minneapolis violence surges as police officers leave department in droves. The sound of gunfire has become so familiar across North Minneapolis that Kathy Spann, S-P-A-N-N, worries she has grown numb to it. Day and night, the bullets zip through this predominantly black neighborhood, hitting cars and homes and people. The scores of victims have included a 7-year-old boy wounded in a drive-by shooting, a woman who took a bullet that came through her living room wall while she was watching television with her family, and a 17-year-old girl shot in the head and killed. Now, some people say police officers don't prevent crimes. Well, they may not have prevented the crime. Say you have somebody who did a drive-by shooting. They may not have prevented that drive-by shooting. But when you get that person off the street, you prevent them from killing other people, regardless of race. Because when we look at gang-related violence, you go back and read the Bureau of Justice Statistics report dealing with homicides in the U.S. from 1980 to 2008. Page 12, table number 7, clearly tells you that 53% of gang-related murders from 1980 to 2008 were committed by white people. 53% of gang-related murders from 1980 to 2008 were committed by white people. It's a 36-page study. How do I know? Because I read the study. Bureau of Justice Statistics, bjs.gov, page 12, table number 7. 56% of gang-related murder victims. 56% of gang-related murder victims from 1980 to 2008 were white. But when you watch the evening news, you think gangs are only black, African Americans and Hispanics. No. So, okay, read this article here. We run out of time. But so some people say, because I saw an article from thegrio.com today. It said Joe Biden said that the defund the police movement cost Democrats some House Representative seats. I said that if you've been watching this show, I told you back in June, Joe Biden should not come out supporting defund the police. I said that's a good way for him to lose. Okay. He supports rooting out systemic racism from policing to housing he supports rooting out systemic racism in policing. Read the op-ed article that he wrote for the USA Today back June 10th, 2020. We talked about it on this show when it came out. Biden, we must urgently root out systemic racism from policing to housing to opportunity. Federal dollars should not go to the departments that violate people's rights or turn to violence as a first resort. But I don't support defunding police. Read this article. Because I said when this came out in June 2010, June 2020, June 10th, 2020. I said, good. I said, don't buy into defund the police because Trump is going to paint you as supporting defund the police and you're going to lose. That don't play all across the country. That defund the police only plays in certain cities among certain demographics. There's approximately 18,500 police departments all across the country. That don't play all across the country. So he talks about the need to support mental health, all different types of things, and adequately support police departments. Have surplus budgets for police departments, but he's talking about we need to do both. Totally agree with that. And hold police officers accountable, because the current administration has taken a hands-off approach to policing. They've dismantled a lot of the criminal justice reform that the Obama administration did. Because see, under the Obama administration, there were about 24, 25 investigations into the patterns and practices of police departments. Okay, which led to about 14 or 15 consent decrees. The Trump administration has taken a hands-off approach to policing. So when Jeff Sessions became Donald Trump's first attorney general, one of the first things he did was backed off of investigating police departments to hold police officers accountable. He said we need to take a step back and basically take a hands-off approach to policing. And then his second attorney general, William Barr, says he doesn't think systemic racism exists in policing. How you gonna fight systemic racism in policing? You don't even want to acknowledge it exists. Go read that op-ed that Joe Biden wrote back June 10th, 2020. We talked about it here on this show. This is what I'm saying. A lot of stuff sound good in hashtags. When you got to actually do it and see, and when I was involved in writing public policy for the city of Detroit, I sat on that committee for 13 months. We met once a month, and it was Executive Order 22. It dealt with making sure that at least 50% of the people who got jobs on city-funded construction projects were Detroiters. Lived in Detroit. It did not include road construction because the funding for road construction is different. And what we imagined before we started rewriting that policy was different than what we actually came out with. The reason why was because once we got in and started looking at the different entities here, we realized what we initially imagined wasn't realistic. So we had to actually do what was realistic. Otherwise, you just set everything up for failure. That's the difference between theory and actual practical application. All right. So let's move on. Tommy Tiny Lister, best known for portraying Debo in the Friday movies, passed away age 62. TMZ first reported this. A release from the LA County Sheriff's Department says friends and business associates of Tiny Lister became worried Thursday, December 10th, when they had not heard from him since Wednesday night. Deputies performed a welfare check where they made their way into his apartment and found him deceased. At this point, police officers say it's believed that Tiny Lister died of natural causes, but an autopsy will be performed to determine an official cause of death. Ice Cube, who starred in Friday, the movie Friday, posted a tribute saying, "Rest in peace, Tiny Debo Lister. America's favorite bully, was a born entertainer who would pop into character at the drop of a hat, terrifying people on and off camera, followed by a big smile and laugh. Thank you for being a good dude at heart. I miss you already." And I just realized I actually met Tiny Lister. This had to be, I was working at another radio station then, so it had to be probably about 20 years ago. He was in a play that was traveling to different cities. Is the Easter play? Dealing with the resurrection of Jesus. I forgot the name of the play. And they had a black Jesus, of course. But he was in the play, and in the play he was playing a character like Debo riding around on the bike. So there was a reception, I think, before the play. And it was and I worked at the radio station, so I got to go. We met the cast of the play, and I got to meet him also. So Tommy Tiny Lister, famous for playing intimidating but lovable tough guys in films like Friday, has passed away. TMZ has learned. Law enforcement sources tell us they got a call to the actor's Marina Del Rey apartment Thursday, just before 3 p.m. for an unconscious male. Our sources say Tommy was not transported to the hospital as he was pronounced dead on the scene. We're told the coroner is at the home, but there's no word yet on a cause of death. Though Tiny began landing his bullying bad guy roles in the 1980s, he's most famous for his hilarious turn as Debo in Friday and the sequel Next Friday. He also played President Lindbergh in the sci-fi action film The Fifth Element, and more recently appeared in the box office smash hit The Dark Knight. He voiced the character Finnick in Zootopia as well. Along with acting, Tiny Lister had 2 short pro wrestling stints and starred alongside Hulk Hogan as the bad guy Zeus in the 1989 film No Holds Barred. So I remember when he started doing wrestling, and his wrestling name was Zeus. I remember all that. So he was 6'5". Okay, he had the nickname Tiny, but he was 6'5". So rest in peace, Tiny Lister. Check this out at tmz.com. Now also, we posted this as well at on my personal page, and I think I shared it on the African History Network. Today is also the birthday of Theodore Wilson. Okay, Theodore Wilson, Teddy Theodore Wilson, or Theodore Teddy Wilson, is best known as playing Sweet Daddy on Good Times. Okay, but I mean, he was a good actor. Before he played Sweet Daddy on Good Times, he was on That's My Mama, okay, with Clifton Davis as Clifton Davis' best friend Earl. Okay. And Earl, in the first season, Earl was a mailman. The second season, Earl was a barber in the barber shop with Clifton Davis. Clifton Davis is he gets out of he's in Vietnam. He's a Vietnam veteran. He inherits a barber shop from his father. So he's like 25 years old and he's an African-American businessman. This is like 1972, 73. That's My Mama. Okay, I have every episode on DVD, just like I got all 122 episodes of Sanford and Son on DVD. I've got a hell of a collection. So, and one of the things I studied the history of African American cinema as well, because the TV shows and the movies reflect the views and opinions of society in different time periods and what was going on in society. Then that imagery in those movies then impact people all across the country, impact the way people think, feel, act, and behave. Whatever's disseminated becomes imitated. Okay, so having the background in marketing, understanding this, when I was in business school and studying marketing, I'm also studying African history and African American cinema and seeing how all this connects. So Theodore Wilson, he's best known as portraying Sweet Daddy on Good Times. Okay. And then there was one episode of Good Times from season 4 where he played a nightclub owner, where JJ had a comedian. JJ was managing a comedian. He borrowed money from a loan shark. Okay. And Theodore Wilson was in that role as well. So we want to say happy birthday to Theodore Wilson. Now Theodore Wilson also, he was married to Joan, I think her name is Joan Pringle. Joan Pringle was an African-American female actress. The second season of That's My Mama, Joan Pringle portrayed Clifton Davis' sister, okay, on That's My Mama. The first season, it was Lynn Moody who portrayed his sister. The second season, it was Joan Pringle. I'm not sure how Theodore Wilson and Joan Pringle met. Maybe it was on the set of That's My Mama, but they end up being married. Now she goes on to co-star in a series on CBS called The White Shadow. The White Shadow, starring Ken Howard as a former Chicago Bulls basketball player. He injures his knee. He goes and becomes a basketball coach in an inner city high school named Carver High School. And he is a coach. It's a lot of African-American players, Hispanic players, and he becomes like a father figure to them. Okay. It was a TV show, lasted 5 seasons on CBS called The White Shadow, starring Ken Howard. Pretty good show. Kind of white paternalistic, white savior type show, but it was still good, especially for that period of time, late 70s, early 80s. Okay, so that's so happy birthday to Theodore Wilson. He was born in 1943, December 10th, 1943, passed away in 1991. All right. Let's see here. How's everybody doing? Do we have any calls, Shakita? Okay, everybody share this broadcasting on social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in also. Okay, let's continue here. I want to go to this clip here. Cue that clip up from MSNBC. We're gonna go to that right here. Yeah, Joan Pringle. Yep, that's her name, Joan Pringle. That was a beautiful sister right there. And then Joan Pringle played the mother to Flex Alexander on One-on-One. Okay, One-on-One. With Flex Alexander and Kyla Pratt. And Flex is a friend of mine. He's one of my frat brothers, Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. So shout out to Flex Alexander and Shanice. I interviewed them back in 2016 on Roland Martin's radio show. I want to go to this clip here. This is from MSNBC. This deals with this lawsuit out of Pennsylvania. They got shut down by the U.S. Supreme Court. Let's go to this clip, Shakita.
Supreme Court crushed Donald Trump, and I mean crushed him unanimously. All 3 of the Trump-appointed justices joined their 6 colleagues to deliver Donald Trump the most legally insulting possible response to a Trump lawsuit brought to the Supreme Court that itself was an insult to the intelligence of every member of the court. When Donald Trump was desperately rushing to fill Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat on the Supreme Court, he said then that he needed that ninth justice in order to rule in his favor in election cases so that he could hold on to the presidency.
We need 9 justices. You need that. With the unsolicited millions of ballots that they're sending, it's a scam. It's a hoax. Everybody knows that. And the Democrats know it better than anybody else. So you're going to need 9 justices up there.
You're going to need 9 justices up there, meaning he was going to need 9 justices up there to outlaw millions of mail-in ballots. That's what he was saying he was going to ask them to do, and he did. That's Donald Trump saying, I know I'm going to lose the election with voters, but once I bring a case to the United States Supreme Court to throw out millions of mail-in ballots, that's how I'll win my second term as president of the United States. Donald Trump planned to do that. Donald Trump thought it was in the bag because he put 3 of those justices on the Supreme Court. Today, the United States Supreme Court refused to even consider a case brought to invalidate millions of mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania. Donald Trump was expecting his United States Supreme Court to issue an historic opinion invalidating Pennsylvania's mail-in ballots, and instead, he got this piece of paper. I'm not sure if the light can show you this correctly, but it's this tiny little piece of print right here. That's the whole thing. But this is the Supreme Court's way of saying, you are out of your mind. It is an order from the Supreme Court. It does not have any justices' names attached as the authors of the order, which means it is a unanimous order of the United States Supreme Court. And it simply says the request to hear the case by the Supreme Court is denied. They don't even bother to give a reason for the denial because the case itself is so preposterous, so insulting to them that anyone would try to bring such a case to the Supreme Court. Denied. 2 hours before Supreme Court issued that denial to hear Donald Trump's case about Pennsylvania ballots, Donald Trump publicly called on the Supreme Court to save him.
Let's see whether or not somebody has the courage, whether it's a legislator or legislatures, or whether it's a justice of the Supreme Court or a number of justices of the Supreme Court. Let's see if they have the courage to do what everybody in this country knows is right.
Yeah, it was a number of the justices of the Supreme Court. It was all of them. And it turns out the Supreme Court did have the courage to do what everybody in the country knows is right. In fact, it didn't take any courage at all. It just took simple adherence to the most elementary legal principles, none of which Donald Trump understands. Donald Trump went out and stood at a microphone today, and with those words you just heard him say, he insulted the United States Supreme Court by publicly asking the justices to corrupt themselves for him, and then they insulted him right back by doing the right thing and doing it in one sentence. And this insult exchange between Donald Trump and the Supreme Court, including the Supreme Court justices who Donald Trump thinks he owns, occurred on Safe Harbor Day. Happy Safe Harbor Day. It's not a day we usually notice, but it is a date set in 19th century federal law that says that all states that have certified their election results 6 days before the Electoral College meets cannot have those election results overturned by Congress when the Electoral College presents its results to Congress in January. In other words,
pause right there, Shakita.
Election as president.
Pause right there. Okay. All right. We're out of time here. We're going to continue for a few more minutes on our social media platforms, the African History Network on Facebook, Michael M. Hotep on YouTube. Remember, right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win Wakanda forever. Stay tuned for Greg Davis. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace. Stand by, everybody. Stand by. Okay. So check that out from Lawrence O'Donnell. That was from December 8th, 2020. Lawrence O'Donnell, The Last Word, MSNBC. How's everybody doing? Hey, if you'd like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, and also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, and at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay, so Pennsylvania fires back at Trump's long shot election lawsuit. Pennsylvania's attorney general has filed the state's response to a lawsuit Texas has brought to the U.S. Supreme Court that seeks to overturn President Trump's election loss. Quote, the state of Texas. So we talked about this lawsuit from Texas a couple nights ago. The state of Texas has now added its voice to the cacophony of bogus claims, okay, to the cacophony of bogus claims. Attorney General Josh Shapiro of the state of Texas wrote in Pennsylvania's brief, quote, Texas seeks to invalidate elections in 4 states for yielding results with which it disagrees. Texas seeks to invalidate elections in 4 states for yielding results with which it disagrees. Texas is suing the state of Pennsylvania and 3 other battleground states President-elect Joe Biden won: Georgia, Michigan, where I am, and Wisconsin. Okay, and all these cities got major cities with a large African-American population. Okay, Pennsylvania has Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. Georgia has Atlanta. Michigan has Detroit. Wisconsin has Milwaukee. Is that a coincidence? Is that a coincidence? Now, Donald Trump on Wednesday, June 9th, moved to join the lawsuit, and 17 states, all with Republican attorney generals, filed friend of the court briefings in support of it. Trump held a lunch at the White House today, December 10th, with several of those attorney generals. In Pennsylvania's briefing, Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro urges the Supreme Court to reject, quote, this seditious abuse of the judicial process. This seditious abuse of the judicial process, and to send a clear and unmistakable signal that such abuse must never be replicated. And to send a clear and unmistakable signal that such abuse must never be replicated. Legal experts, liberal and conservative alike, say the Texas lawsuit is a long shot. It has no merit. Quote, this case is hopeless, said Tom Goldstein, a Supreme Court expert. Texas has no right to bring a lawsuit over election procedures in other states. Texas has no right to bring a lawsuit over election procedures in other states. And in any event, the justices will think that this case, like all others, should be brought first in the lower courts, not just in front of them first. At a Hanukkah party at the White House Wednesday night, Donald Trump falsely claimed to the crowd, quote, we're going to win this election. And he still had on those steroids they gave him when he had coronavirus. Okay. And he's conning all these dumbasses to keep donating money to him. He's raised $250 million since November 3rd to pay attorneys to fight these lawsuits. These are some of the dumbest people. Okay. Now, U.S. breaks record with over 3,100 COVID-19 deaths in a single day. The Thursday evening, December 10th, critical FDA panel vote comes at as the coronavirus crisis is reaching new heights all across the country. On Wednesday, December 9th, the U.S. reported a staggering new record of more than 3,100 deaths from coronavirus. That's roughly 1 death every 28 seconds. That's roughly 1 death every 28 seconds. The U.S. has also reported a record 222,994 new cases on Wednesday, December 9th. That's a record number of new cases in one day, 222,994. And more than 3,100 deaths in one day. Hospitalizations continue to set new records every day, with 106,668 patients receiving care across the country, according to the COVID Tracking Project. In all, the U.S. has reported more than 15.4 million cases and has surpassed 290,000 deaths. Okay, it reached 15 million cases in 5 days. They added 1 million cases in 5 days. That's how fast the infection is spreading. And Donald Trump is basically doing nothing, just hoping that a vaccine gets approved. But a vaccine is not a silver bullet. One, you have to convince people to take it. You need, from my understanding, you need at least probably 70% of the U.S. population to take it for it to really be effective. One. Two, it's not clear if you are vaccinated, if you can still pass it to other people, because most of the vaccinations, it doesn't keep you from getting coronavirus. It will keep you from having symptoms, so you won't get sick. Okay, so most of these vaccinations, if you're vaccinated, you can still get coronavirus, but you won't have symptoms. You won't get sick. But it's not clear that you won't pass it to other people. It's not clear that you won't pass it to other people. So you could get vaccinated and still possibly pass it to other people. It's not clear now whether or not, you can still pass it to other people, even if you're vaccinated. Okay. Which means that people are still going to have to wear the masks and practice social distancing for the foreseeable future. Okay. So check out the updates from NBC News dealing with coronavirus, and also the updates from the Washington Post as well. Washington Post has really good live updates dealing with coronavirus. And we look here, we'll post a link here. U.S. death record. U.S. sets death record again as FDA advisors recommend Pfizer BioNTech vaccine. This is December 10th, 2020. For the second day in a row, the United States has reported a record number of COVID-19 deaths, topping even the worst days of the spring surge. The back-to-back records are dark reminders that even as vaccines appear to hurtle toward approval, the country is still far from the pandemic's end. The country is still far from the pandemic's end. By Thursday evening, December 10th, the daily U.S. toll topped 3,300. Okay. By Thursday evening, the daily U.S. toll of deaths from COVID-19 topped 3,300. It was on Wednesday, a record number of 3,140 people died of COVID-19 in one day. That record was broken on Thursday, where you had 3,300 people who died. States in the South and the Midwest, along with California, are contributing most to the increase. The steadily rising fatality numbers also come after weeks of soaring levels of infection and coronavirus patients in need of hospitalization. Public health experts anticipate that the country will soon exceed the week's death milestones nearly every day in the coming 2 or 3 months. As we talked about on our Wednesday show, Wednesday, December 9th, we're starting to see the impact of the Thanksgiving Day travelers. Okay. And there was a piece from NBC News dealing with that. Let me see if I can find that from Wednesday. I think it was Wednesday. Yeah. Post-Thanksgiving Day surge arrives. Post-Thanksgiving Day surge arrives as U.S. breaks daily coronavirus record. This is from Wednesday, December 9th. Remember, leading up to Thanksgiving, I told people don't travel because I told you what was going to happen. The much feared surge that public health officials had predicted from travel and gatherings over Thanksgiving appears to have arrived. The U.S. reported a record high of 222,211 new cases on Tuesday, December 8th, marking the fifth day in the last week that single day counts have risen above 200,000. Okay, so the chickens are coming home to roost. Or maybe we could say the turkeys, because it was Thanksgiving. The turkeys are coming home to roost. Okay, so check this out. We'll post a link here to the Washington Post. And then let me see, there was one article I saw here. I'm looking at the live updates from the Washington Post. There was one I was looking at. Let me see if we can find it here, because I need to print these out. Okay, yeah. U.S. surpasses 3,300 deaths in a day, a record. Exactly 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, the United States on Thursday tallied nearly 3,350 coronavirus-related deaths in a single day, another record. The toll is the second time after the harrowing high of 3,140 set Wednesday. Deaths from the virus eclipsed the 2,977 lives lost to the terrorist attack on 9/11. Public health experts anticipate that the country will soon exceed that milestone nearly daily in the coming 2 to 3 months. The national 7-day average for daily deaths is 2,360, a pandemic record. Also on Thursday, California and Nevada reported records for daily death tolls from the pandemic, while California was one of the 9 states that recorded a high for the state's 7-day average of daily death counts. In 37 states, deaths over the past week related to the virus rose from the week before. Meanwhile, the national infection count has topped the 200,000 mark 7 of the past 9 days, when the nation first reached that milestone. Thursday's reported case count was nearly 220,000. So check this out also from Washington Post. We're going to post a link here on the thread of the broadcast. Okay, let's continue here. Let me see. So we got this one here. Also check out this article from NBCnews.com. We talked about it briefly here when we did this news roundup segment. Seditious abuse of judicial process. Seditious abuse of judicial process. States fire back at Texas Supreme Court election challenge. States fire back at Texas Supreme Court election challenge. Okay, and we'll post a link to this article directly here as well. All right, lastly, I want to get to this article. I want to get to this story quickly here. And how's everybody doing? Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. African American business owners, email us at customerservice@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, customerservice@AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. Okay. John Hopkins University reveals that its founder owned slaves. John Hopkins University reveals that its founder owned slaves. The university and its medical, the university and its medical system have long celebrated that their founding benefactor was a staunch abolitionist. Okay, but newly surfaced documents tell a different story. New York Times has a big article about this from December 9th, 2020. It's a tale that has long been repeated at the university and medical center in Baltimore that bears his name. In 1807, the 12-year-old John Hopkins was summoned home. He was summoned home from boarding school to work the fields of the family's sprawling tobacco farm in Maryland after his father, following the directives of his Quaker faith, freed the family slaves. Young John Hopkins grew up young John Hopkins grew up to be a widely successful businessman, and as the story goes, a committed abolitionist. And on his death in 1873, he left $7 million, the largest philanthropic bequest in American history at the time, to found the nation's first research university, along with a hospital that would serve the city's poor without regard to sex, age, or color. Now, John Hopkins' Quaker rectitude has been a touchstone for the institution he founded. But an important part of that origin story, it turns out, is untrue. On Wednesday, December 9th, John Hopkins University released new research revealing that there were enslaved people in its founding benefactor's household as late as 1850, as late as 1850. And while the Hopkins family's entanglements with slavery are complicated, the university has so far found no evidence of John Hopkins' father freeing any enslaved people. The university has so far found no evidence of John Hopkins' father freeing any enslaved people. As for the long-standing claims that John Hopkins himself held abolitionist beliefs, it is unclear whether they rest on any evidence at all. In a letter to the Hopkins community, the leaders of the university, medical school, and medical system announced a multi-year effort to further study the Hopkins family's connections with slavery, which it called a crime against humanity, a crime against humanity. The revelation about John Hopkins, the leader said, quote, calls to mind not only the darkest chapters in the history of our country and our city, but also the complex history of our institutions since then and the legacies of racism and inequity we are working together to confront. This is a big article from New York Times. I want to pull it up here. John Hopkins reveals that his founder owned slaves. This is written by Jennifer Schuessler. Jennifer Schuessler, Schuessler. All right, now, and also they have excerpts from an 1850 census record showing 4 unnamed slave inhabitants in the household of John Hopkins. Now, in recent years, a growing number of universities have confronted their historical entanglements with slavery. Many, sometimes in response to student activism, have renamed buildings or removed statues of slaveholders or created prominent memorials to enslaved people who built and served the campus. John Hopkins University, founded after the Civil War by a supposedly anti-slavery benefactor, might seem to have largely sidestepped that reckoning, even as it increasingly acknowledged how the university, which did not admit its first African-American graduate until 1945, John Hopkins University did not admit its first African-American undergraduate until 1945, okay? Even as it increasingly acknowledged how the university has been shaped by Jim Crow and racism. By last spring, a researcher at the Maryland State Archives became aware of an 1850 census record listing 4 enslaved African people in the household of a man named John Hopkins, and contacted the university. Its president, Ronald J. Daniels, asked Martha S. Jones, a history professor, to investigate the matter as part of a broader exploration of the university's history of discrimination, a broader exploration of the university's history of discrimination, announced in July 2020 in the aftermath of the George Floyd protests. In an interview, Mr. Daniels said the news of John Hopkins' slaveholding was, quote, obviously extremely painful, end quote, but he added that it was important to tell the full story of the man, citing the university's motto, "The truth will set you free." Mr. Daniels said, "You want your origin story to be more than mythical. For an origin story to be foundational and durable, it also has to be true. How the news will land at the university or in Baltimore more broadly, a majority African-American city with which the university has often had fraught relations, remains to be unseen." But Mr. Daniels said he hoped that, quote unquote, unflinching introspection, okay? He hoped unflinching introspection and transparent disclosure would create a stronger foundation for our relationship. Asked if he imagined the university's name might be challenged, he said that while it was important to fully acknowledge John Hopkins' slaveholding, the institution was not defined by it. Okay. Quote, over the course of our almost 150 years of history, there's been lots of scope for choice in the way in which we charted our mission and the way in which we've taken the best from the bequest we received, end quote, he said. Okay. Few personal papers of Hopkins and his family survive. To begin fleshing out the story of the Hopkins family and slavery, Professor Jones worked with Allison Saylor, Seyler, the program manager of an existing Hopkins history project at the university's library, to dig into legal, census, and other records. In addition to the 1850 record, the researchers found an 1840 census entry showing one enslaved person in the Hopkins household. In addition to the 1850 record, the researchers found an 1840 census entry showing one enslaved person in the Hopkins household. The 1860 census does not list enslaved people in his household. They also found documents from the 1830s showing that John Hopkins and his firm sometimes sought to acquire enslaved people to settle debts. They also found documents from the 1830s showing that John Hopkins and his firm sometimes sought to acquire enslaved people to settle debts. But Professor Jones, whose scholarship focuses on Black political activism in the 19th century America, also looked at just how the university came to tell a rosy and, it appears, erroneous story about John Hopkins to begin with. She said, quote, the story of Hopkins' forebears having freed enslaved people of Hopkins as an abolitionist suited us as an institution, she said. Okay, so read the rest of this article here from the New York Times. John Hopkins reveals that its founder owned slaves. John Hopkins reveals that his founder owned slaves. This is from December 9th, 2020 by Jennifer Schuessler for the New York Times. Check this out. All right. Hey, if you like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, then also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. So this definitely helps support us, helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting. We're here 6 days a week as opposed to 1 day a week. As of October 12th, we're here Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to 12 midnight Eastern Standard Time. And then we're still here Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as well. Okay. Follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. Turn on notifications so you know when we go live. Follow us on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. Turn on notifications so you know when we go live there as well. All of my DVD lectures are available at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And we have bundle packs there. Also, we have the 8 DVD bundle pack, The Africans Who Were Here Before Columbus, The Africans Who Were Here Before Columbus. It includes a double lecture I did with Dr. David M. Hotep, who wrote the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. And then also one I did with Professor Kaba Kamene, who's in the Hidden Colors documentaries, who dealt with the African presence in the Mississippi Valley and the Americas. And it includes one from Dr. John Henry Clark, Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust, one from Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, They Came Before Columbus. So that's The Africans Who Were Here Before Columbus. And then also the Black Migration 1619 to 2019 6 DVD bundle pack. Those are 6 of my presentations. That's available also at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. That includes 6 principles of political self-defense, understanding how laws and policies impact the economic conditions of African Americans. It includes Black Migration 1619 to 2019, where I deal with the 400th year anniversary. Includes one dealing with the history of African American jockeys and how we used to dominate horse racing and win the Kentucky Derbies. First Kentucky Derby was ran in 1875. It was won by a 19-year-old African American man named Oliver Lewis. And we got pushed out of horse racing. There was an organized effort to push us out of horse racing. Okay, so that's all available at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. That's all available at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All right, look, hey, we have to get out of here. Remember the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. Talk to you next time. Peace.